clear of the closing doors, please.
First, let me say I'm shocked to hear the amount of homicide for queer people in Brazil, 1 every 25 hours. I am shocked. And the first thing that comes to my mind is setting up our own brigades, some kind of safety patrols. I don't know, I think we need to put our creative minds together and brainstorm. This is a horrible statistic, and I'm shocked and saddened by it. Judith Butler was brilliant when she defined our fluxing state of being as performance, that we are performing queer. It's not a static, essentialist nature that one is born into. And I think that changes everything. I think we were doing it and have been doing it since the first queer came out, but I don't think it was identified as such, and a whole theory wasn't developed around it. But I know when I walk down the street and I see another lesbian, so I give her the look, which is straight into the eyes, which is a look of knowing, and she either performs that back to me, or if I've made a mistake and she's straight, she averts her eyes. Right away we have a queer language that is performing itself. And of course, why do we dress the way we do? Why in the 1970, when I came out, did I wear flannel shirts and cut my hair in a bowl cut? Because that was the way you saw each other as a lesbian at that time. And we wanted to know who our community was. So Judith Butler gave us language that describes our performative being. And if we're performing, then everything can be new tomorrow, because I'm not going to repeat the same performance today that I did tomorrow. I'm querying the archival space by throwing all these facts in the air, questioning what's true, what's fiction, having a good time myself. That's part of opening up kind of an intellectual space. And I love the essay documentary film, a film that asks and talks about ideas rather than a particular place. Even with the Bishop film, I focus on the homes and what kind of artistic practice happens in the homes. But to collage, to cut, to paste, to bring together disparate facts makes the audience an archaeologist of cinema. While they're watching, they become the historians. You have to decide, folks out there, what is true and what is false. And maybe in this day of fake news, that's even more important to do. On the other hand, what is truth? That seems like truth can be approached from many viewpoints, and it may be multiple, like everything else in the world, even light. It can be both a static form and a wave sound. This is the clue. This is the clue to a way of understanding the world. Multiplicity and play, not holding anything but human life as sacrosanct. I think queer themes and queer form are shaking hands and intertwining fingers. I don't think you can separate one from the other. If you have a documentary on television, and maybe you've seen Ken Burns in Brazil, well, it doesn't matter if he's working with a lesbian subject or a queer subject. He's cutting in a traditional hetero way. So he's making straight cinema out of a queer subject. A queer themed film made with a queer aesthetic is not going to follow a traditional beginning biographical story of the person, a climax and a denouement. No, it's going to mix up life. Even like our minds, we can be in the past in the same second that we're here in the present. Gertrude Stein spoke about the world being round and that there is a there. Even that simple sentence about Oakland, California, her home for a while, makes us think about time and historic time and present time. And they're all contained within the same second. As an early out feminist and lesbian filmmaker, there have been doors closed to me. It was before identity politics was recognized in the mid-90s. There are not enough lesbian films being made today. I couldn't find any when I began. That's why I decided this was going to be my life's work, was to put a lesbian on the screen, her life, her interests for the 20th century, the second half, and now into the 21st century. Still, even today, I was researching on the internet lesbian experimental filmmakers, and I couldn't find but a handful. A lot of people identify as queer today, which in some ways erases the lesbian. In some ways it builds for a strong movement because we can work together. But I'm not for forgetting the lesbian. My work in bringing forth lesbian histories from the past of artists is because I couldn't find any when I was beginning and because I thought my life would be lost as well. So this was a way of building a solid foundation for lesbian culture in the future, lesbian artistic culture. And that's why I wanted to bring forth and do the research and dig in and find out about Claude Cahun and Marcel Moore, very smart women with clever artistic ways to resist. You know, Elizabeth Bishop, oh, poor dear, you know, she was doing her work, her poetry, in the 50s. You know, I was born in 39, so I was a teenager in the 50s, going into adulthood, and I know what that picket fence and those rules were on how I should behave as a woman, let alone lesbian. I hadn't even heard the word until I was 30 years old. So one can understand the closet that Bishop was in, and in Brazil, a Catholic society, as well. I think that queer film, and that includes all of our films, trans, lesbian, bi, etc., gay, are mainstream now. People are fascinated with our culture. The heteronormative world wants to know what's going on, and oh, that looks like fun. I want to go to a gay bar. So people want to drink up from our lush well. Is that a problem? No. Is that helpful in terms of people coming to accept queer people with equal rights? Yes, it is. I don't see that we have to have only queer people making film. I say that the more authentic film, the film that can challenge the dominant culture, really can only be made by queers and experimental queers, because still it's an experimental lifestyle that you're choosing to live if you choose to be queer or any of those other names that I've mentioned, identity names. Until queerness is as boring, dare I say that, until queerness is as boring as heteronormative sexual practice, then we need to have queer films, experimental, documentary, animation, and mainstream. The only problem is, watch out for the mainstream. For instance, blue is the warmest color. Very popular film. Why? Sex scenes, sex scenes, sex scenes. Well, if you look at that film, you'll see something a lesbian would never have done. That was a heterosexual male director, white. you would have known who those women were. You would have seen them in the classroom more, painting more. One was an artist, one was a teacher. You would see their work and their professional life being more part of their identity than the few cutaway shots that we got. And even more importantly, when you read the stories behind, you would never have put fake pubises over the pelvis. You would never have women working under hot lights for 8 hours a day until you got the shot that you wanted. This was inhumane, this was unhumanist, this is not feminist, it wasn't even queer. There was no queering of the space. It was like putting lesbians in a hetero story. That's what it was. It was a love story. It could have been a man and a woman just as easily as two women with a prolonged, misogynist sex scene. The problem with cisgender men making films about trans people, trans men or trans women, is a major problem. There's no way to understand the culture unless you are a part of it. I'm not saying there can't be some representation, but most of the representation should be in our own hands. It's very important that trans people get money to make their own films. That is happening a lot right now. I see it in the film festivals, and that's in the States. I don't know about Brazil, really. But there is one thing that's very interesting. Some of my friends who have transitioned to men, so they're trans men, have come out as trans men who are feminists. And this, I think, is totally appropriate and important, because both the cisgendered man and the trans man need to swallow up equal rights for women, no matter if it's a trans woman or a cisgendered woman, or bisexual woman, or an asexual woman. Women are still second-class citizens, and I'm speaking about the United States, where we can't even elect a woman president who has a mind. Look at who we get, a buffoon. Humanist and not a feminist, because one day feminists will be in the past. That's true. But I don't think it's in my lifetime. I don't think it's in your lifetime. And I say that because male privilege has been so deeply ingrained. Now we have mansplaining. So some people are in a conversation, but the man knows the answer, and he'll talk right over the woman or ignore her. We see it every day. It's going to be a long time till we need to forget feminism. So I ask everybody to become a feminist. Children, men, women, trans, asexual, bisexual, join the feminist movement. It's equal rights. I mean, what could be wrong with that? And when we're all feminists, okay, then it doesn't matter what we call ourselves. Maybe we won't even be saying trans and queer at that time. Then we can really be humanists. We won't need identity statements, but it's so far off. Until we get to that place, we need to be who we are and name ourselves. We have our own culture. We have our own ways of working. We have a way of making things vital, turning things on their head, opening the space for queerness to be there, so that we are invited into a new kind of world and a way of being that isn't so prescribed and isn't following rules. So let's see more queer cinema made by queers. If I had a magical wand. Huh? Look at that, a magical wand. 3 things, only 3? Oh, easy. This is an end to war. This is love between all peoples. This is a lesbian in the White House.